Hello there, my name is Bryce Fraser and I'd like to welcome you to the Christian Media Project. The video you're about to see was originally released probably around 2017, but I removed it from its original forum because I had added a comment in it which I felt was just too much personal opinion and could affect people's proper theological viewpoint regarding the subject that I was bringing up. So you're going to see a glitch in the film, and that's where I put in my own opinion rather than what I should have been, I don't know, more disciplined in discussing. So with that said, I hope that you enjoy this. This was a more unusual one for me because it went into a real social issue which I believe has been abused terribly for so many years. And it's originally was supposed to be about the horrors of prison rape and why we need to absolutely bring capital punishment into the prison system against anyone who rapes another inmate. But because I knew so many people who claimed to have been from gangs and shared their stories with me, and a lot of them really were in gangs, some I've sort of questioned, but either way, because of those personal friendships, and also many of them just weren't friendships, it was more research than anything, I felt it would be more important to go into the real heavy-duty question of all, which is basically, are all gangbangers homosexuals? And I believe that from my opening statement, it proves my thesis to be correct by the end of the video that you're about to see. So I hope and pray that it's edifying for you, that it gives you a chance to look a little bit closer into the situation of how much we are to love our neighbors versus condoning their behaviors and bypassing what they're actually doing. So as I say, this is going to be one of the more unusual videos that I present to you. But I hope you can get something good out of it, and just please remember, in all situations, you cannot be saved outside of faith in Jesus Christ. The tomb is empty, Christ is risen. When I was 13 years old, I was in a class where we had to read periodicals and then write papers on what we'd read in the periodicals. And one changed my life forever. It was a periodical on prison. And I had seen movies as a kid, but you know, they didn't seem as terrible as could be, although confinement craze seemed to be a pretty bad thing, these old black and white films that were on television. But this one shocked me because it told the gritty truth, and the line that shocked me the most was, it basically went like this. On my first night in prison, I saw the young man across from me get raped by one of the older prisoners. Oh, wait, what? Now, I knew the word rape from a newspaper that I'd read when I was younger, and I'd asked my parents what that was, and they explained it to me as best as they could, but I'd always thought it was only a man who could be aggressive towards a woman. I had no idea men were doing this to each other. I didn't even know really what a homosexual was until I had read this article, which horrified me beyond measure. But I made a promise to myself to that day, there is no way I'm going to do anything to get myself thrown in prison, because that's what happens to people in there, and it happens over and over and over again. No, 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 not going to happen to me. But as the years went on and I found out more and more people knew about this barbaric practice within our prisons, I couldn't understand why people were still going out of their way to break the law, even though they knew that they would go to prison eventually if they kept up with the practice. And the biggest group of them that I knew of were these so-called gangbangers. And they hung out, they dressed the same way, and they always ended up going to jail. They started in, juvenile hall, and then they progressed all the way up into regular prisons. I was like, why would you ever, knowing what goes on in prison, what happens to you in prison, why would you join a gang? Why would you join a gang where you are guaranteed you will go to prison eventually? I mean, I didn't know one gangbanger who hadn't gone to jail and ended up in prison. Why would you do this? And then after speaking to some of them later on, after they'd gotten out and gone through all their experiences, I came to this direct conclusion. All gangbangers are actually homosexuals. They want to go to prison so that they can either be raped or later on become one of the rapists themselves. It's the only logical conclusion. Why would you join an organization that guarantees you'll be thrown into jail? It guarantees it. You are going to jail. You are going to jail, you are going to get raped, and later on you might become one of the rapists yourself. Why would you do that? You're a homosexual. Now, when I analyzed what a lot of these guys were going through, they had, basically uncles who were gangbangers, and a lot of them were molesting the kids. They had fathers who they'd never seen because they were being raised by their uncles, as you can tell, because the fathers had abandoned or they were in prison themselves for having been gangbangers, and they were going to be there for the rest of their lives. And they were basically being raised not only by their uncles who were molesting them, but also primarily by the women in their family. And like the aunts, the mothers, the grandmothers, etc., and so on. So a lot of these guys had these homosexual tendencies from a young age, from actually being molested. So they were attracted to each other, and they couldn't explain to their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunts, I have this feeling for other men, because they'd get a big slap across the face. You deviant, you need to go see Padre Pio, and he'll make you say the rosary and all this other nonsense. And then it turns out that half the priests were molesting the kids as well. So it was, this big roundabout circle. In San Diego, this was very, very common because there's a huge community of illegal aliens who come into the country. They have the kids. The kids are raised by these gangs or the families and so on, but they're also raised in the Catholic Church, where the molesters half the time are the priests or the nuns themselves. So they have these urges, these sexual urges towards the same sex because of what they've gone through initially with other men. And they don't know how to explain it to their mothers, their aunts, their grandmothers, etc. So this is what I've been able to conclude, is that you join a gang because you have homosexual feelings and you don't know how to express it without, without somebody retaliating against you within your family. So you would rather go into a cage where you can experience homosexuality, even if it's by force, rather than, try and deal with it like a real man on the outside world. Now, I don't know too many people who go, you know what, I can get all this stuff from a gang, like being chased by cops, being afraid all the time, being told what I'm allowed to say where, etc. And I get to be in this locked room with tons of really smelly men, and you don't say to yourself, oh, I would love to do that. No. You say that if you're a homosexual, but not if you're a normal man. It's a given. Real men don't even want to smell themselves when they're in the bathroom. I mean, it's just a given. So why would you want to be in a room locked up for years upon years with other men who are raping each other and doing really sick things with feces and all that other stuff, unless that is your own personal desire to be around other men? Now, it's a twisted form of wanting to be around other men, but it's the only way you seem to be able to acknowledge it. So, as a Christian, I don't ever want to condone the behavior. Despite the lies of the Illuminati overlords in the media who claim that Christians are persecuting homosexuals, no. We were saved by the grace of Jesus Christ, and the law was fulfilled. So we don't throw rocks at people and stone them to death anymore. We pray for them. We tell them, we understand you're going through this pain, this torment in your soul. God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. God gave us this desire to be with the opposite sex, but you're dealing with basically this demonic force, this spirit of confusion, and we truly love you. We care about what you're going through, but we cannot condone your behavior. If we condone it, then we're saying, guess what? It's totally acceptable. We'll just forget what God says about it in the entire Bible. No, we can offer you our love, our prayers, any kind of, explanations we can offer, be a support base in what way we can, but to show tolerance by not condemning this behavior, that's cruel and heartless on our own parts against you if we were to do that. So I can never ever condone the behavior. And there's a lot that actually shows within the gang culture just, how homosexual they really are. I mean, take a look at the way gangbangers dress. They actually have a style called sagging, where the pants sag and show basically their butt end, their underwear, and, this is the big rap culture, gang culture, whatever it is style. But that comes from prisons. And everybody knows this. If you're in prison and you sag, that means that you're willing to have a man have sexual intercourse with you in a homosexual fashion. So every time I see a gangbanger walking down the street, I'm not thinking, ooh, what a tough guy. I see them as, wow, there goes a homosexual trying to, be a peacock around other homosexual men in the hope of hooking up with them within the gang itself. And a lot of these gangbangers have told me that their first sexual experiences happened even before they went to prison. They actually had it with their own gangs. Their own gangs raped them before they even made it to prison. And also you'll note that older men are the ones who recruit these young boys to join gangs, and many of the young girls by many of their lesbian mentors. You'll notice that many of their bisexual sex rituals for initiations actually require where one girl is to, or even boys are to be sexually molested in a group. So what man is going to do anything with another man in the room with a woman unless they have an attraction to that man as well? You won't see me anywhere near anybody except for a woman when it's just me and my woman. That's it. I mean, that's what marriage is all about. But as I say, the fashion statements even show that it's about homosexuality. There's a specific uniform you have to wear for each gang that you join. And also, you'll notice recently, like, many of the best known homosexual gangs in the world, if they're biker gangs, because obviously they want to go to jail together, and South Park did a great version on biker gangs and being gay, but also, the Crips and the Bloods, many of the secret society gangs, Illuminati types like the Freemasons, the Skull and Bones, many homosexual rituals. Same with a lot of these, fraternities have a lot of their hazing rituals are very homosexual. Football teams are notorious for it, in high school especially, where men are trying to impress other men rather than trying to impress women, so they beat other people up. Did you see me beat that guy up? Yeah, guy, yeah, here, let's hang out. Why aren't you chasing girls? Why aren't you trying to impress girls? You're always trying to impress other men, and this is what gangs are notorious for. But also Illuminati gangs, like Hollywood's homosexual community is so strong that they get away with a lot of very violent crimes against a lot of same-sex victims who are basically given hush money or told to hush up or die, or especially against kids, as has been coming out so much recently. But you'll notice that also they're very open in going after Donald Trump, who says he doesn't want MS-13 in the country. Well, MS-13, they're one of the most violent gangs, but they're also unbelievably homosexual. whether it's full-blown homosexuality or bisexuality. So why is the media protecting MS-13, looking at them like they're victims, unless they have the same interests, which is the homosexual element? So there's a lot behind the whole gang culture and how much homosexuality is actually involved. But the basic tenets are there. If you join a gang, you are going to end up in prison. It's a guarantee. You are going to get raped. Or you might end up at a later time becoming one of the rapists, but it becomes a regular thing. You are stuck around the same sex in a locked cage for time in, time out, for whether it's months, years, whatever it is, and you all have to smell each other. You know, basically you're surrounded by other men, and body odor is bad enough just by oneself. It's really disgusting around a bunch of men who aren't bathing properly and, you know, doing a lot of other gross stuff within that room with each other. So people may say this isn't a very scientific, but it seems very scientific when you look at all the facts that are there in front of you. All gangbangers are homosexuals. It seems an absolute fact. I mean, the control group is there. The science is there. If men want to be around each other that much, instead of being around women, I mean, do you know how many good-looking women are in this world who are just like looking for a good guy who's gonna be a husband? Not the Hollywood crowd who are all about the party and everything and believe that's gonna bring happiness, because it doesn't, outside of, you know, one night with, you know, a boy and a girl falling in love, outside of, you know, the drugs and everything else that's involved in the sick perversity of the Hollywood scene. There are so many wonderful women out there. Why would you want to hang out with men? Why would you want to hang out with men on a Friday night instead of a girl? I'm speaking from the male perspective here, as you can see. When I was 13 and discovered how awesome girls were, I mean, if I was hanging out with my friends, it was because girls weren't interested in me who I was interested in, and I had all these questions to ask of the guys around me of like, we weren't talking about dude stuff. We were talking about, okay, what's the best way to meet this girl? I like this girl, etc. and so on. That's what we did when we hung out. We talked about girls because we wanted to be with girls. And when somebody had a girlfriend, they disappeared from this friend circle because they had a girl. Girls are awesome. Why would you want to go into a cage? I'll repeat it over and over. When you can be with a girl, when you can be with women. Women are awesome. Why would you try and impress another man in a hallway of a school, let alone in a hallway locked up, when you can impress a girl? Girls are awesome. So my conclusion is this: all gangbangers are homosexuals because they're always hanging out with men, they're always trying to impress each other, and they end up becoming each other's gay rapists in prison. Whether it's, you know, an MS-13, a Crips, a Bloods, the Nazis. I mean, Hitler was gay. It was already proven. Lothar Machton's book, The Hidden Hitler, was the greatest expose imaginable against not only him, but so many of the others. There's another one called The Pink Swastika, and I keep forgetting also about the documentary The Hidden Führer, which is based upon Adolf Hitler. I mean, Nazism's as gay as it gets. So anytime I see a Nazi skinhead out there, I'm not thinking, ooh, scary Nazis. I'm thinking gay. I'm thinking that for the Ku Klux Klan. All these men hanging out in bed sheets in a men's fraternity, and not only just a men's fraternity, but a racist fraternity. Shoo, boy. Seems pretty gay to me, man. And then, of course, you have your biker gangs, you know, dressing like peacocks, and they're, oh, I'm tough. Watch the South Park episode on that one. It is so dead on true regarding motorcycle gangs. Oh yeah, we're bikers. We're tough. We're gonna get in fights in bars so we can touch other men. I mean, that's what fighting is. It's your way of touching other men. Ooh, maybe we'll get to grapple and wrestle, and then it'll be like really sexually exciting as I'm in this bar while pretending to be straight. No, you're gay. You're totally gay. Hell's Angels, fiercely gay. That's all we can believe because the facts are there. I mean, you're hanging out with a bunch of dudes. Maybe once in a while we'll see you with some toothless broad. But really, we always see men hanging out with men. You know, football teams, that always tripped me out in high school. The men always hanging out with each other, trying to, impress each other by being the biggest gay douchebags out there, when only a few of them you ever saw off on the side with the girls. It's like there are all these drop-dead gorgeous girls and you're hanging out with the guys. No. You knew who the straight football players were and who the gay ones were because the straight ones were hanging out with the girls. So, plain and simple. It works that way in any kind of a gang. So, if you want to go out and do something really stupid with a bunch of guys, know that you're going to prison or jail or whatever, and you're going to get raped. Or you can hang out with girls, and girls are awesome. So, all gangbangers, basically all criminals in general who keep doing the same crimes over and over until they get caught, obviously gay. I have no other conclusion I can come to. And I believe I've made my case perfectly clear on this one, that what could the other possibility be?